born at my grandmother Esping's house in Lindsborg, Kansas, a little town of 3,000 people. The reason I was born at my grandmother's house, I had one brother that was almost 3 years older than I, and he was born there instead of the little Lindsborg hospital, because at the time he was born, there had been 2 mothers who had died at childbirth, and there was some type of a germ or some disease or something in that hospital. And my grandmother just felt like he shouldn't be born there because that might happen to my mother. So they said, why don't you have your baby at our house? And so when he was born there, then I came along 2 years and 8 months later. They decided that that was really a good situation, and they were invited to do that again. And what was interesting, my mother had the new young doctor in Lindsborg, Dr. Hawarda, and mother had not met him. My dad met him first. My dad went to interview him, you might say. He went to talk to him. And he had a little office up above a store in Lindsborg. And his wife, Dr. Hawarda's wife, was his nurse, just those 2 there. And my dad visited with him, and he came home and told my mother that he had been to visit with Dr. Hawarda, and I think you should have him for this baby, have him for your doctor. I think you would like him, he said. So that's what they decided to do. And so mother went to see him then for her checkups before I was born. And Dr. Hawarda even did a trial run to where my parents' farm was in case they couldn't get to town in time. So he wanted to know where the farmhouse was and how to find this farm. And to think that they would take that much time to do that is amazing. And then another thing that mother told me, that he told her to sterilize a lot of newspapers and put the newspapers in the oven and keep those handy if I would be delivered at their home. I don't think they used newspapers at my grandma's house. I never heard that part of it. But anyway, I was born on a Saturday night, and mother's sister Ruthie had been visiting, and they had been to town on Saturday night, which was a big social thing, because that's when the farmers brought their eggs and cream to town and bought their groceries and so forth. And they got back home, and mother said to Ruthie and my dad, you know, I'm starting not to feel so good. I think maybe this baby is going to come. So Earl was already in bed in the crib, and mother always told me how she hated to leave him in that little crib, but it was great that Ruthie was there so she could stay with him. And my dad and mother went to town to my grandmother's house, and I guess they called Dr. Hawarda from there. And so I was born there, and mother had quite easy labor compared to when my brother was born. And at that time in 1932, when babies were born, new mothers had to stay in bed at least a week. And my parents had talked to a lady who would come and stay with new mothers, and kind of like a nurse or midwife, or she came after the baby was born, and so she stayed there, and she took care of mother and me, the baby. And mother also told a story about one time she heard a little noise in the baby basket, and nobody was around, and she got out of bed and went and peeked to see if the baby was all right. And she knew that she shouldn't have done that, but nothing happened from that, so she got along okay after that. And when she went home to the farm, it was really quite a shock to her because she had been in town where they had running water and electricity, and at my grandma Esping's house there were also some of my dad's sisters living there, so she was treated royally and really spoiled. And when she got home, she had to do this all by herself. And I don't remember the story of who else came and stayed with her after she got home. I think maybe her aunt, Betty Sandquist, came and stayed for a while after I was born to help out. Because in those days you had to wash the diapers, and it was a lot of work for having a baby. This happened on June 10th, 1938. I was 6 years old, and at that time we called it a cyclone. Called it a cyclone always, you know. And I don't know what the difference between a cyclone and a tornado. I think a cyclone's more of a straight wind and not as funnel-like. But anyway, it had been a hot day on June the 10th. And sometime towards the evening, this storm came up with lots of wind and rain. And I remember being in the living room and looking out the window when it got light with lightning. And I just yelled at my parents, "The windmill blew down." It was laying on the ground. And then it seemed like the wind kind of changed, and we thought that the wind was going to blow in our dining room window. And my dad was a strong man, and he just leaned against and pushed on that door, and the whole family got over there and pushed on that door, and it never did blow in. But my mother always told a story about what I said when we were pushing on that door. She said that I said, "I know where we'll be tomorrow. We'll all be in heaven." So that was a 6-year-old's thoughts. But I also remember, and Earl talks about that too, of being under the stairway there in the dining room. We had an open stairway, and underneath, Mother on a chair there, and both of us kids just kind of sitting in her lap during that storm. And windows blew out, and wind blew in, and then I remember going to bed, and we had a rug, area rug, in our bedroom, and it was wet. It had rained through the shingles, and part of my mattress was wet, so I had to lay on the other side that was dry. And of course rain had come in through the house, and I told a story about getting the turkeys in and trying to save some of the turkeys. But we just were thankful that we were all safe. And then the next day we went out and observed the damage. The chicken house had blown away, and some other little sheds for pigs, or the milking shed, or whatever other things had blown away. And then our great big barn had blown off the foundation, and somehow my dad hired people who had, can't think of the word, to lift it up and put it back on the foundation. Talk about my grandparents' marine being just 2 miles from us. And it was always fun to go over there. And we got together always, I know, once a week or more. And Mother did so much with grandmother, and Mother helped out so much there. And in the summer, I would go over there and stay like a week at a time. I remember sleeping in the same bed with Grandma. Grandpa slept in another room then. and Garfield was there, and she was a good cook, and I was just with Grandma and just doing things with her, just being her little pal, and also doing things with Garfield.